Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're plunging into the heart of complex topics, really pulling out those golden nuggets of knowledge for you. Today we're tackling something that, seems simple on the surface, but it's actually incredibly intricate. We're doing a deep dive into fertilizer science and application in agriculture, our mission, to figure out how we can feed a growing world more efficiently. We'll cover everything from like basic nutrient math to cutting-edge AI.
Exactly. And that precision, it's just vital. It's surprisingly complex stuff. Get it wrong, and the environmental impact can be huge. But get it right.
Well, the potential for sustainable growth is massive. We've looked at a whole range of sources for this, practical guides, nutrient tables, but also, deep scientific papers on environmental dynamics and plant biology itself. It's going to be quite a journey.
Okay, let's start big picture then. We always hear about the growing global population. That means, well, an ever-increasing challenge, right? Feeding everyone. It's a massive challenge, and right now, modern agriculture, it really leans heavily on chemical fertilizers. The problem is these need finite resources, fossil fuels, minerals to make them. That's just not sustainable long term. So there's this urgent need for new crop varieties, new cultivars that are just better at grabbing water and nutrients, more efficient.
That makes total sense. So plants using what's already there more effectively.
Yeah.
Before we get into applying stuff, though, what are the actual building blocks? What nutrients do plants absolutely need to grow? It's not just generic plant food, is it?
Oh, not at all. Plants need specific things. Mostly three big ones. The macronutrients, there's nitrogen, you'll see that as N, phosphorus, often shown as P2O5, and potassium, K2O. And it's amazing how specific plants are. Take corn grain. Per bushel, it removes about 0.67 pounds of nitrogen, 0.35 of phosphate, and 0.25 of potassium.
Okay. 0.67 N, 0.35 P2O5, 0.25 K2O for corn.
Right. Now compare that to soybeans. A bushel of soybeans, it takes out way more nitrogen, 3.25 pounds, plus
Yeah.
0.73 pounds phosphate and 1.18 pounds of potassium.
Wow. 3¼ pounds of nitrogen for soybeans versus, what, 2/3 of a pound for corn? That's a huge difference.
It is, and it shows why you can't just, treat every field the same. It requires real precision, and it's not just grains, forage crops too. Orchard grass, for example, pulls about 50 pounds N, 17 P2O5, and 63 K2O per acre. Alfalfa is interesting. It takes almost no nitrogen from the soil because it has those nitrogen-fixing bacteria in its roots. They pull it from the air.
Ah, right, the legumes.
Exactly. But it still needs phosphorus and potassium, about 15 pounds P2O5 and 60 pounds K2O per acre. So whether you're growing field corn, maybe aiming for 200 bushels an acre, needing, say, 180 to 250 pounds of nitrogen, or soybeans needing over 300 pounds of N, mostly from those bacteria, plus 65 to 75 pounds of phosphorus. The point is, it's specific. It varies.
Okay, so knowing what the plant needs is step one. Step two must be actually getting it there. How do farmers translate those plant needs into, like, pounds or gallons of fertilizer? It can't just be guesswork.
Oh, definitely not guesswork. There are basic formulas. For dry fertilizer, it's pretty straightforward. You take the nutrient rate you need, multiply by 100, and then divide by the percentage of that nutrient in the fertilizer bag. So say you need 15 pounds of nitrogen, and your fertilizer is 30% nitrogen. That means you apply 50 pounds of the fertilizer product.
Okay, 15 times 100 divided by 30. Yep, 50 pounds. Makes sense. What about liquids?
Liquids are similar, but you also need the weight, the density. If 1 gallon weighs, say, 10.86 pounds, then that 50 pounds of fertilizer product we calculated, that works out to about 4.6 gallons. These calculations are fundamental, but, they only work if you know what you need in the first place.
Which brings us to the soil itself, right? You need to know what's already there. Soil testing must be absolutely key.
Critical. Absolutely critical, and getting accurate samples is paramount. Usually farmers test every 3 or 4 years. They check pH, organic matter, P, K, zinc. For leftover nitrogen, what we call residual nitrate, especially before corn or wheat, you need to sample deeper, maybe 3 to 4 feet. A bit less for dry beans, maybe 30 inches. But honestly, a lot of producers now are sampling every year. It helps them spot trends, see how things are changing over time.
So more data points give a clearer picture.
Exactly. And there are different ways to do the sampling. There's the traditional whole field approach, maybe 10, 20 soil cores mixed together from a big 20 or 50 acre area. Or you can get much more precise with site-specific methods like grid sampling or management zone sampling. These precision methods cost a bit more upfront usually, but they show you the variability in the field. Maybe pH is high here, or phosphorus is low over there. And knowing that lets farmers put the right amount in exactly the right place. It's about optimizing, not just saving costs, though sometimes it does that too. Better yields and definitely better for the environment.
That precision sounds like the ideal. But what happens when things go wrong? When maybe traditional methods lead to putting too much on or in the wrong place? What's the real-world fallout?
Well, a really stark example is the Mekong Delta in Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's a huge rice-producing area, massive. It accounts for something like 55% of Vietnam's total rice output. They often use really intensive systems, double, even triple cropping rice each year.
3 rice harvests a year. Wow.
Yeah, pushing the land hard.
Right.
And to get those high yields, typically a vast amount of fertilizer is applied, often way more than recommended by sustainable programs. Vietnam has this program called One Must Do 5 Reductions, or 1M5R, trying to promote sustainability.
One must do 5 reductions. What are they reducing?
It's about using less seed. That's the one must do. And then reducing irrigation water, fertilizer, pesticides, post-harvest losses, and greenhouse gas emissions. So efficiency and sustainability. But even with programs like that, the reality in the Mekong Delta, well, the nutrient loss is pretty staggering. Nitrogen use efficiency, only about 30–35%. That means roughly half the nitrogen applied is just lost to the environment. Gone.
Half. That's incredible waste.
It is. Phosphorus is a bit better retained by the soil, but efficiency is still low, maybe 10–15% uptake by the plant. Losses are around 10–12% through surface runoff and maybe 0.5% leaching down deeper. Most nitrogen escapes as gas ammonia volatilization or through nitrification denitrification. Phosphorus, well, it tends to stick to soil particles, but it still gets washed away in surface runoff. Studies there show nutrient levels fluctuating a lot in the surface water, but much less in the deeper subsurface water. It really points to runoff and gas losses as the main problems, not so much leaching deep down, at least in those paddy systems.
That paints a really clear and frankly worrying picture. All that lost fertilizer is wasted money and potential pollution. So what does this tell us about trying to make agriculture more sustainable everywhere?
It tells us we need to get much smarter. We can't just look at the field from above. We need to understand the plant itself, right down to the roots. How does it actually take up these nutrients? Because improving that efficiency, well, that's key.
Right. Let's zoom right in then, down to the roots in the soil. How do they actually grab those nutrients? It's not just soaking them up like a sponge, I assume.
No, not at all. It's a very active, very complex process. We often model it using something called Michaelis-Menten kinetics. It's borrowed from enzyme studies. Think of the root surface having these special transporter proteins, like tiny pumps or gates, specific for each nutrient. This model helps us understand things like Imax, the maximum speed the root can absorb a nutrient when there's plenty around. It's like the system's top speed. And Kine, that tells us about the affinity, like how strongly the transporter grabs onto the nutrient ion. A lower Kine means it's good at grabbing it even at low concentrations.
Okay, so active transport, like pumps.
Exactly. And running those pumps costs energy, a lot of energy, actually. The plant has to make and maintain these transporter proteins. Plus, it needs energy, ATP, to power the pumps, often by pumping protons, H plus out, to create an electrochemical gradient. There was an estimate for maize, corn, that maybe 20% of the plant's total respiration, its energy use, went just towards taking up nitrate.
20%, just for one nutrient.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And for barley, another study suggested 5% of root respiration for just absorbing nitrate, and another 15% for processing it, assimilating it. So it's metabolically expensive for the plant.
That really drives home why efficiency matters so much. Wasted energy means less growth, lower yield.
Precisely. And plants are smart too. They have what's called ion uptake plasticity. If a root encounters a patch of soil with high nutrient concentration, it can actually increase its uptake capacity right there, ramp up the number of transporters, basically. It's a cost-saving strategy, right? Focus your energy where the food is richest. This is especially important for mobile nutrients like nitrate that move around in the soil water, less so for something like phosphate, which doesn't move much.
Fascinating. Plants actively hunting for nutrient patches.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so connecting all this, the global need, the plant needs, the soil, the root biology. How is technology helping us manage this complexity? You mentioned AI earlier.
Right. This is where things get really exciting with computational modeling and AI. We use these things called rhizosphere models. The rhizosphere is just that zone of soil right around the root. These models are basically complex computer simulations. They use physics equations, often the advection diffusion reaction equation, to simulate how nutrients move towards the root and get taken up.
Advection diffusion.
Yeah,
So that covers nutrients moving with the water flow and also just spreading out.
exactly. Diffusion is key for nutrients like phosphate that don't move easily. Advection, or mass flow being carried by water, is more important for mobile ones like nitrate, calcium, magnesium. Which process dominates depends on, the nutrient concentration, how much water is in the soil. And these models, they're getting sophisticated. They can include things like how nutrients stick to soil particles absorption, or how roots might release substances like citrate to help dissolve phosphate and make it available.
So really detailed simulations of that hidden world around the root.
Yes. And then AI comes in to take these principles and apply them at scale. You have platforms now, like YieldSap is one example, that use proprietary AI algorithms. They take in farmer data, soil data, weather data, maybe satellite imagery, and combine it with these biological and physical models. The AI then generates tailored recommendations precisely how much fertilizer or even pesticide to apply where and when to optimize yield and quality. It turns all that complexity into actionable advice.
That's incredible. Bridging the deep science with practical farming decisions. So, looking ahead, what breakthroughs might these digital tools unlock next for sustainable agriculture? Where is this heading? What an amazing deep dive that was. We've gone from the huge global challenge of feeding billions right down to the microscopic dance between roots and nutrients. We covered the basic needs of plants, how farmers calculate application rates, the critical role of soil testing, and the sobering environmental impacts when we get it wrong, like in the Mekong Delta. Then we zoomed into the root itself, how it actively takes up nutrients, the energy costs involved, and finally, how advanced modeling and AI are bringing new levels of precision. It's so much more than just scattering fertilizer, isn't it?
It really is. And maybe the thought to leave you, our listener, with is this. Think about how this convergence, deep biology, precise measurement, powerful computation is maybe paving the way for a kind of second green revolution.
Yeah,
It's a shift.
right.
Not just about maximizing yield by adding more inputs from the outside, but about optimizing how we use resources by truly understanding and even enhancing the plant's own amazing abilities, especially its roots' ability to find and acquire nutrients. It's a future where, hopefully, we work much smarter with nature, not just harder against its limits.